Yes, sir. Madam President and honorable senators, Mr. Speaker, and members of the Honorable House of Assembly. Today's opening of Parliament follows upon my government's election to office just 16 days ago. My government has been entrusted by the Bahamian people with a clear and overwhelming mandate to effect important and far-reaching changes in our country for the benefit of all. The challenges that confront us in the Bahamas today are as numerous as they are complex. Accordingly, my government will present an ambitious and extensive agenda for this new Parliament. The Bahamian people expect and deserve nothing less. Central to that agenda are two overriding imperatives. Firstly, the need to reduce violence and crime and build a safer Bahamas. Secondly, but in tandem with the fight against crime, is the need to build a stronger economy that generates jobs, deepens and broadens Bahamian ownership, and produces a higher standard of living for all Bahamians. Those twin imperatives will dominate the agenda for action of my new government. At the same time, however, my government will also move as resolutely as fiscal realities allow to implement the full range of programs, legislative proposals, and policy initiatives promised in the platform entitled Charter for Governance. In this regard, urgent priority will be given to the implementation of the action plan outlined in the Charter for the first 100 days of my government. The implementation of this first 100 days is, I am pleased to report, already in stride, as witness the implementation of two of the action items within the very first week of my government coming to office, namely the creation of the Ministry for Grand Bahama and the restoration of the Ministry of Financial Services. Madam President and honorable senators, Mr. Speaker, and members of the Honorable House of Assembly, violence and crime corrode the very fabric of a nation. They must therefore be attacked and eradicated at the root if we are to build a secure and prosperous society. My government is absolutely determined to pursue this objective with unbounded energy, imagination, and unwavering dedication. My government will immediately reinstate and expand the Urban Renewal Program to serve as a core instrument to combat the underlying social causes of crime and violence. My government will establish an Urban Renewal Commission to facilitate interagency collaboration and coordination in the delivery of services to the community. My government will, as a matter of high priority, introduce a national crime management agenda comprising effective prevention, detection, prosecution, and rehabilitation. My government will move for the repeal of all provisions of the Police Act which are unconstitutional or attempt to politicize the police force or undermine the impartiality and security of tenure of the Commissioner and Deputy Commissioner of Police. My government will also create a national intelligence agency comprising all law enforcement departments to address all categories of major crimes on a coordinated basis and with a greatly improved intelligence gathering capability. My government will also develop a national firearms control strategy and establish a proper firearms department and database. My government will also reintroduce the Swift Justice Initiative to ensure the timely prosecution of cases and reduce the number of persons released on bail for serious crimes. My government will also reintroduce, as a matter of the most urgent priority, the Witness Protection Program, so as to ensure that key witnesses and their families are protected. My government will also move to amend the Rehabilitation of Offenders Act to assist young and first-time offenders in embracing a life founded on the values of honesty, hard work, and respect for the life and property of others. My government will also, as a matter of high priority, reintroduce school-based policing to curb school violence. My government will also revitalize the tourism-based policing initiative to enhance visitor safety. My government reaffirms its determination to more effectively police our borders against illegal immigration, drug trafficking, human trafficking, illegal firearms, and poaching. The Royal Bahamas Defense Force will therefore be re-equipped and repositioned to more effectively combat these menaces. In accordance with its Charter for Governance, my government would also hold a referendum for the Bahamian people to decide whether a national lottery should be instituted and or whether web shop type gaming should be decriminalized but nonetheless regulated in accordance with internationally accepted best practices and in a way that would ensure optimal revenue generation for the country. Madam President and honorable senators, Mr. Speaker, and members of the Honorable House of Assembly. The plight of homeowners in financial distress must be addressed if a stronger economy is to be restored. My government will therefore work with the clearing banks and other institutional lenders to develop a financially sustainable mortgage relief program aimed at assisting distressed homeowners in saving their homes from foreclosure. Participation in such a program would be voluntary. My government will also seek to bring employee pension funds under closer regulation and supervision to ensure that pension funds are duly protected and that trustees and managers of pension funds are held to a higher standard of transparency and accountability, and that employees are afforded access to their pension savings for emergency purposes, including mortgage relief. My government, in an effort to stimulate the real estate market, will also make good on its commitment to lower the maximum rate of stamp duty on land sales from 12% to 10%, and will also reintroduce a maximum cap on real property tax. My government will also enact amendments to the Subdivision Act to make the building and planning process more efficient and less costly. My government, in an effort to help reduce the cost of rental housing, will reform the Rent Control Act and will seek to promote the construction of new rental units at more affordable prices. My government will aggressively pursue the expansion of affordable housing, especially for lower-income Bahamians. My government regards this as a social priority that requires focused and sustained attention. My government will also seek to provide additional land for home ownership through the purchase of vacant and abandoned lots as a part of the Urban Renewal Initiative. My government will create a reliable land register and a proper system of land registration. My government will also review and amend as necessary the laws relating to commonage land so as to allow for greater commercial use and beneficial enjoyment of land by commoners. Madam President and honorable senators, Mr. Speaker and members of the Honorable House of Assembly, my government is deeply wedded to the belief that private enterprise should remain the primary engine of job creation and entrepreneurial opportunity in our country, and that tourism and financial services supported by industrial expansion, fisheries, and agricultural production should be the chief areas of economic activity in our country. In this regard, my government is committed to the formulation and execution of policies that will encourage private investment in these areas while maximizing job creation and career development for Bahamians in the shortest possible time. As small and medium-sized enterprises are the job creation engines of today's economy to an ever-increasing extent, my government will refocus the mandate of the Bahamas Development Bank and the Bahamas Agricultural and Industrial Corporation to provide equity, credit guarantees, and marketing and accounting support for fledgling businesses. The necessary enabling legislation will be introduced by my government as a matter of priority. My government will also implement a number of initiatives, including the grant of special concessions to promote the economic development of Grand Bahama and to facilitate the extension of the same benefits that are available under the Hawksbill Creek Agreement to East and West Grand Bahama. In order to revitalize our critical tourism industry, my government will seek to increase the number of available and affordable rooms. Promotional efforts will explore opportunities for tourism growth in niche markets, inclusive of film, entertainment, sports, health, and religious tourism, as well as medical, heritage, and economic tourism. The cultivation of new markets in Asia and Latin America will also form a key part of the National Tourism Promotion Plan. My government will give focused attention to the refurbishment and redevelopment of downtown Nassau to make it a pedestrian and shopper-friendly city while retaining and enhancing its historical appearance. My government will work in collaboration with local and foreign air carriers to improve airlift to and throughout the islands of the Bahamas. My government will also create opportunities for Bahamians to own hotels through a national resort development initiative. Recognizing that agriculture is an integral part of any sustainable economic development plan, my government will give focus to increasing food production as a vehicle to promote food security, create jobs, and boost domestic investment. My government will initiate plans to construct a Bahamian Food Sciences Institute in North Andros with a view to incorporating it into the University of the Bahamas. My government will also aggressively pursue the development of a mariculture industry in the Bahamas and the further diversification of a fisheries industry which is reserved for Bahamians. Madam President and Honorable Senators, Mr. Speaker and members of the Honorable House of Assembly, my government believes that education is the principal vehicle for promoting the economic development of individuals and the nation as a whole in the overarching framework of a rapidly evolving 21st century global economy. Education is the key to both personal and national empowerment. Conscious of that truism, my government will seek to reform our educational system to bring it more technologically in tune with 21st century challenges and to better position Bahamians to compete for jobs both locally and on a global level. My government will review and strengthen the national literacy and numeracy plans, both of which are critical to educational achievement and economic advancement. My government will also introduce a standardized national high school diploma program to ensure that graduating students meet stipulated minimum levels of proficiency. My government will also develop a national regulatory framework to establish at the secondary school level a system of career path academies. Legislation will also be placed before you to establish the University of the Bahamas. Regulations will also be developed to establish and oversee new standards for preschool and early childhood education. My government recognizes the important role played by the Bahamas Technical and Vocational Institute in training and retraining Bahamian workers. Accordingly, the Council for BTVI will be appointed with a view to bringing the BTVI Act fully into operation as rapidly as possible. My government will also seek to provide enriching experiences for our youth through innovative programs that promote cultural and self-awareness, community services, social skills training, mentorship, knowledge of civics, and exposure to principles of leadership and responsible citizenship. Centers of excellence for sports will also be established within Family Island communities to help develop and help identify and develop sports talent. My government will also promote cultural expression in the visual, performing, and literary arts, expand cultural education programs, and enhance stakeholder participation in the development of our cultural heritage. My government will move swiftly to end all forms of discrimination, especially against persons with disabilities. In keeping with this commitment, legislation will be enacted. The United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities will also be signed and ratified. My government will bring about the full implementation of the Child Protection Act 2007. In an effort to reduce poverty, promote human capital development, and improve the effectiveness and efficiency of social assistance programs, my government will move speedily to undertake social safety net reform. In the area of health care, my government is firmly committed to the principle of universal access to health care, decentralized health delivery systems, and a re-engineering of systems for financing the delivery of health care so that it can become more affordable. My government will also take steps to advance our nation's preparations for the introduction of national health insurance in a financially sustainable way. My government's commitment to national health insurance remains undiminished. My government will facilitate the Public Hospitals Authority's acquisition of new cancer screening technology to ensure that Bahamian women have access to state-of-the-art mammogram machines at both the Princess Margaret Hospital in New Providence and the Rand Memorial Hospital in Grand Bahama. Madam President and honorable senators, Mr. Speaker, and members of the Honorable House of Assembly, my government will seek to amend the Local Government Act to better define the parameters for the employment of persons providing service to local government councils. In the area of transport, which is so vital to our archipelagic nation, my government will overhaul the existing air sector policy to create a safer and more efficient air transport system. This will include the creation of a modern civil aviation regulatory regime, the creation of a fully independent body to investigate air accidents, enhanced communications technology, and upgraded radar equipment. Additionally, steps will be taken to address the management of the Bahamas Flight Information Region, which will permit access to overflight fees on the Bahamas' upper airspace. In relation to maritime transport, which is no less vital to our national interests, my government will procure the implementation of maritime safety standards, protocols, and inspection regimes on all national ships and personnel, and the adoption of the Caribbean Safety Code and Small Vessel Code. To encourage environmental sustainability in Freeport, Grand Bahama, the Freeport Bylaws Act 1965 will be amended to impose mandatory standards for environmental management. My government will develop a national water policy in conjunction with all stakeholders and will ensure the proper extraction of ground and potable water so that all Bahamian communities will, in the shortest time, within the shortest possible time, have access to piped potable water. My government will initiate a plan to lower the cost of electricity throughout the Bahamas through the development of an alternative energy production and improve efficiency at BEC in the areas of administration, power production, and equipment maintenance. My government will review the regulations established by the Utilities Regulation and Competition Authority to ensure that they conform to the Constitution and reflect Bahamian values in the context of responsible freedom of expression in a democratic society. My government will finalize its long-standing Foreign Service orders for the enhancement and strengthening of a professional foreign service. Madam President and honorable senators, Mr. Speaker, and members of the Honorable House of Assembly, there is an emerging consensus that the Bahamian tax system is simply inadequate to meet the needs of a modern 21st century society. My government will therefore launch an extensive review of the Bahamian tax system with a view to proposing alternative means of taxation that address the problems of the current system while providing the government with a stable, buoyant, and adequate source of revenue to meet its governance obligations to the Bahamian people. My government will introduce legislation to establish a council of economic advisors. The role of the council will be to develop policy recommendations for government on the major issues pertaining to economic growth and stability, including tax reform. Madam President and honorable senators, Mr. Speaker, and members of the Honorable House of Assembly, there will also be laid before you legislation to prevent the entering into of government contracts, including contracts for employment or the payment of public monies in connection therewith, between the date of dissolution of Parliament and the date of a general election. Unless such contracts or such payments are predetermined by an independent statutory body to be absolutely critical for the maintenance of essential services. Madam President and honorable senators, Mr. Speaker, and members of the Honorable House of Assembly, as my government now sets about the urgent tasks that I have just outlined, they shall be forever mindful that in all things, God must come first, and that without him at the center of our efforts, we labor in vain. My government shall also remain mindful of the need for complete integrity in the stewardship of the people's affairs. Its commitment in this regard is absolute and will remain so. Finally, my government believes in Bahamians and in the capacity and determination of the Bahamian people to overcome all the many challenges that lie before us. Armed with a common purpose and united in patriotism and love for one another, we shall indeed overcome and achieve for our nation the greatness that is its destiny. I pray that the blessings of Almighty God may rest upon your counsels. Yes, this one. President, a copy of the speech from the throne, and may I take this opportunity to congratulate you.
Thank you.